World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. 70 million lives lost. Nations shattered. Cities erased. But hidden beneath the roar of artillery and the thunder of bombers, something else was unfolding. A revolution in science, in medicine, in engineering. Wars are accelerators. They ignite desperation. They compress decades of progress into years, sometimes into months. What might have taken generations was forced into existence by the urgency of survival. If a nation failed to innovate, it would collapse. If it hesitated, it would die. And so, the laboratories of war became the crucibles of modern life. This story is not about battles alone. It is about inventions that escaped the battlefield, inventions that seeped into every corner of modern life. From kitchens to hospitals, from highways to space, the fingerprints of World War II are everywhere. The war ended in 1945. But its creations never ended. Number 1, radar. Eyes in the dark. In the 1930s, radio waves were a curiosity, the plaything of scientists, little more than whispers bouncing across the ether. But war was brewing, and the skies would soon turn deadly. Britain needed eyes where human vision failed. Enter Robert Watson-Watt, a Scottish scientist who believed radio waves could become something more than academic toys. His team built towers along the coast, skeletal giants humming with unseen power. This was Chain Home, a web of steel and signal that stretched invisible fingers into the clouds. Where human eyes could see nothing, the towers painted ghosts on glowing screens, echoes of approaching aircraft. Germany toyed with similar experiments, but only Britain dared to invest fully, pouring resources into an unproven dream. The invention was not just clever. It was salvation disguised as science, a silent guardian standing watch over an island preparing for storm. The summer of 1940. Europe had fallen. France lay crushed beneath the Nazi boot. Britain stood alone. Across the Channel, Hitler gathered his armies for invasion. First, the skies would be cleared. The Luftwaffe would smash the Royal Air Force into dust. But Hitler's confidence met Britain's invisible shield. As German bombers thundered toward the coast, radar towers caught them miles before they appeared. Inside dim, smoke-filled rooms, young women, barely out of school, sat hunched over flickering screens. Green echoes crawled across glass. They scribbled positions, heights, numbers, passing them to fighter command. The information raced across telephone lines to airfields where Spitfires and Hurricanes waited. Engines roared. Pilots scrambled. The defenders rose with perfect timing, ambushing formations before they could strike. Again and again, the Luftwaffe came. Again and again, Britain knew. To the Germans, it seemed uncanny. How could the RAF always be in the right place at the right moment? Frustration turned to rage. London burned. Coventry crumbled. Yet the RAF endured. Radar was not flawless. Phantoms appeared, silence deceived, weather played tricks, but it gave something irreplaceable: minutes. Minutes to prepare. Minutes to save cities. Without radar, Britain would have faced the storm blind. With it, Britain turned the tide, holding the line until Hitler's dream of invasion withered. When the war ended, radar did not fade into museums. It expanded, evolving from military shield into a civilian lifeline. Airports erected radar towers, their sweeping beams guiding aircraft through fog and storm, keeping skies safe long after bombs ceased to fall. Scientists turned radar skyward, mapping clouds, tracing hurricanes, predicting the weather with precision unthinkable before the war. Farmers could now prepare for floods, sailors could steer clear of storms. All thanks to echoes first born in battle. The technology spread silently into every corner of life. Police tracked speeding cars. Ships navigated treacherous seas. By the late 20th century, radar became smaller, faster, invisible. Cars carried it inside bumpers, warning drivers of danger, preventing collisions before they happened. From highways to hospitals, radar became ordinary, essential, woven into daily life. The invention that once saved a nation from annihilation now saved lives every hour, often unnoticed, always indispensable. Radar gave humanity a new sense, sight beyond sight. It transformed fear into foresight, chaos into coordination. In 1940, it shielded Britain from destruction. Today, it shields humanity from countless unseen dangers. Yet as radio waves painted echoes across Britain's skies, another miracle was stirring on the battlefield. Not light, not sound, but medicine flowing straight into human veins. Number 2, penicillin, the miracle drug of war. In 1928, Alexander Fleming returned from a holiday to find something strange in his London lab. A petri dish of Staphylococcus bacteria lay contaminated with mold. Around the mold's edge, silence. The bacteria were dead. The mold was Penicillium notatum. Fleming realized he had stumbled on something extraordinary. He named it penicillin. But science can be cruel to its pioneers. The discovery was fragile, unstable, nearly impossible to extract in usable amounts. Fleming published his work, but the world barely noticed. For more than a decade, penicillin remained nothing more than an academic curiosity, a whisper of potential lost in dusty journals. Then came war. The wounded piled high. Infections killed more soldiers than bullets. At Oxford, Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and their team resurrected Fleming's mold. They purified it, tested it, and saw miracles. But miracles required scale, and scale required America's industrial might. Suddenly, laboratories became factories and petri dishes became arsenals. By 1943, the floodgates had opened. American factories, powered by urgency and innovation, churned out penicillin by the ton. It was no longer an experiment. It was mass-produced salvation. The U.S. Army called it the wonder drug. On Normandy's beaches, medics crouched under fire, syringes in hand, injecting the wounded with clear vials of penicillin. In the deserts of North Africa, soldiers once doomed by gangrene walked out of tents days later. In the steaming jungles of the Pacific, infections that had crippled men for centuries melted away. Entire armies felt the difference. Fewer amputations, fewer funerals, more men returning to fight or to live. Winston Churchill himself, struck with pneumonia in 1943, received penicillin and survived. Headlines blazed across American newspapers, hailing it as the miracle of modern science. By the time of D-Day, the Allies had stockpiled enough penicillin to treat every wounded soldier. For the Axis, the situation was grim. Germany and Japan had no such supply lines, no such factories. They watched in silence, powerless, as the Allies wielded a weapon that didn't fire bullets but saved blood. Penicillin was not just medicine. It was strategy. It was morale. It was victory bottled in glass. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, penicillin refused to fade back into laboratories. Instead, it exploded into civilian life. Hospitals across the world demanded it. Factories that once built bombs now built antibiotics. Diseases that had haunted humanity for centuries, pneumonia, syphilis, meningitis, septic wounds, suddenly faced annihilation. Death rates collapsed. Life expectancy soared. Children survived infections that once killed entire families. Penicillin had done more than treat illness. It had shifted the balance between man and microbe. Medicine had crossed a threshold it could never retreat from. And it did not stop there. Penicillin was the doorway into an entire new age, the age of antibiotics. From amoxicillin to cephalosporins, entire families of life-saving drugs sprang from that mold in Fleming's dish. Today, every prescription written, every pill swallowed, carries the echo of World War II's laboratories. From the trenches to the emergency room, penicillin's legacy continues to fight battles, not against soldiers, but against infection itself. Penicillin proved a startling truth. Not all weapons destroy. Some save. It turned battlefields into testing grounds for miracles, proving science could heal faster than war could kill. Yet even as antibiotics conquered infection, surgeons and medics sought another answer, not in mold, but in blood itself. A bottled elixir that kept soldiers alive when hope was gone. Number 3, blood plasma, bottled life on the front lines. Before World War II, transfusions required whole blood, fragile, short-lived, dependent on exact matches. A battlefield nightmare. Then came Dr. Charles Drew, an African-American physician whose pioneering work in plasma storage revolutionized medicine. Plasma could be separated, dried, stored, shipped across oceans, reconstituted with water. It didn't matter whose veins it came from, plasma worked for all. Drew's innovation birthed the first large-scale blood banks, a quiet revolution that prepared the Allies for the storm ahead. From the deserts of Africa to the islands of the Pacific, plasma became the unseen soldier. Medics carried bottles in packs, trucks rolled as mobile blood banks, planes flew cargoes marked not with bombs but with life. On D-Day, tens of thousands of bottles were ready, waiting for the wounded who would flood the beaches. Soldiers who would have bled out lived long enough to fight again, or to return home. Plasma didn't stop bullets, but it bought time. Time for surgeons to work, time for healing to begin. For families, it meant a letter that began not with "We regret to inform you," but with "He is recovering." The Nazis had tanks, planes, and rockets. The Allies had plasma, invisible, but devastating in its power to resist death. When the guns fell silent, plasma transfusions remained. They became the cornerstone of emergency medicine. Hospitals worldwide built blood banks modeled on wartime systems. Plasma saved car crash victims, surgery patients, the sick and the frail. Today, whether it's in a trauma ward, an ambulance, or a battlefield far from Normandy, plasma flows. COVID-19 patients received convalescent plasma as doctors reached for the same principle discovered in war. A wartime innovation turned into a universal lifeline. In bottles of yellow liquid, humanity learned to cheat death. Plasma proved that survival could be mass-produced. But while medicine was rewriting the rules of life, another invention was quietly preparing to transform kitchens, homes, and daily routines forever. Number 4. Microwaves. From radar to kitchen revolution. Microwave technology was born not for kitchens, but for survival. The British cavity magnetron, perfected in 1940, created high-frequency radio waves powerful enough to detect enemy planes through storms and darkness. It gave Allied radar unmatched clarity. Percy Spencer, an American engineer at Raytheon, worked with these devices daily. One day, he noticed his snack had melted from the radiation. Curiosity turned into experiment. Popcorn popped. Eggs exploded. A domestic revolution had just been discovered in the heart of war. The magnetron became a jewel of Allied science. British labs handed it to the Americans under the Tizard mission, and together, they mass-produced radar units small enough for planes and ships. These systems turned the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic, detecting U-boats lurking beneath the waves, protecting vital convoys. In the Pacific, radar guided bombers through clouds, saving fuel, lives, and missions. Without radar, the Allies would have stumbled blind. With it, they saw everything. Yet hidden in this war machine was an unintended gift. While radar scanned for enemies, the same microwaves could vibrate water molecules, heating food in seconds. The kitchen miracle waited silently inside the weapon. After 1945, Percy Spencer and Raytheon transformed the discovery into the first microwave oven. Bulky, expensive, taller than a man. At first, it was a curiosity for restaurants and ships. But as technology shrank, prices fell, and by the 1970s the microwave invaded homes worldwide. It reheated meals, popped corn, and redefined kitchens. What began as Britain's desperate bid to survive the Luftwaffe became one of the most common appliances on Earth. Today, every microwave hum carries the ghost of radar towers and magnetron tubes forged in war. From melted chocolate to a global kitchen staple, microwaves proved that even weapons could become comforts. But not all wartime inventions warmed homes. Some burned with a light so fierce, they threatened to consume the world itself. Number 5. Nuclear power. The Fire of the Gods Expanded Edition. The road to nuclear power began not in the desert, but in silent laboratories of Europe. In 1938, German scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strussmann bombarded uranium with neutrons, and to their shock, the atom split. Energy burst forth. Nuclear fission had been discovered. News rippled through the scientific world, carrying awe and dread in equal measure. If this chain reaction could be controlled, it might light cities. If unleashed, it could destroy them. As Hitler's armies thundered across Europe, Jewish scientists fled, carrying knowledge and fear. Leo Szilard and Albert Einstein warned Franklin D. Roosevelt that Nazi Germany might build a bomb first. The result was the Manhattan Project, a vast secret empire stretching from Tennessee to New Mexico, guarded by soldiers, filled with physicists. Robert Oppenheimer, Enrico Fermi, Edward Teller, names etched in history, joined forces. They sought to bend the atom itself into a weapon that could end the war, and perhaps the world. The Manhattan Project was unlike anything before. It consumed billions of dollars, swallowed entire cities built in secrecy, and employed more than 130,000 people. Workers enriched uranium at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Plutonium was bred at Hanford, Washington. In Los Alamos, New Mexico, scientists assembled theories into steel and uranium, equations into bombs. On July 16, 1945, the desert shuddered. Trinity, the first nuclear detonation, unleashed a light brighter than the sun. Fire blossomed into a mushroom cloud, stretching into the heavens. Oppenheimer whispered words from the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The weapon worked. Weeks later, Hiroshima was incinerated. Nagasaki followed. In seconds, entire cities disappeared. Tens of thousands perished in fire and radiation. The Second World War ended not with treaties, but with light. Japan surrendered. The atomic bomb had spoken, and the age of the atom had begun. Yet buried within the bomb's fury was another possibility. Nuclear fission could drive turbines, generate limitless power, and fuel a future unchained from coal or oil. In the ashes of Hiroshima lay the seed of reactors that could one day light entire nations. Humanity had split the atom. The door could never be closed again. After 1945, the world rushed into the atomic age. The first civilian nuclear reactor came online in 1951, lighting bulbs not with coal, but with fission. Soon, nuclear-powered submarines prowled the seas for months without refueling, silent predators beneath the waves. Nations erected power plants that hummed with invisible energy, promising electricity, too cheap to meter. But the atom's promise was double-edged. Nuclear medicine emerged, using radiation to fight cancer, skin bones, and save lives. Satellites carried nuclear batteries into the cold void of space. Yet the shadow of annihilation remained. The Cold War was built on nuclear arsenals. Cities lived under the threat of instant firestorms. And when reactors faltered, disaster struck. Chernobyl poisoned the skies in 1986. Fukushima shook in 2011. Nuclear power proved itself both salvation and shadow, clean energy with the capacity for catastrophe. Today, its legacy endures. The hum of reactors powering millions, the fear of warheads sleeping in silos, the paradox of progress born in fire. From Hiroshima's ruins to glowing city grids, nuclear power stands as the war's most terrible gift. It taught humanity that creation and destruction could share the same spark. But not every invention was born to terrify. In shadowed rooms filled with wires and reels, another innovation was rising, one that would decode secrets and one day rule the digital age. Number 6. Computers. Codebreakers of war, architects of the digital age. Mathematics had long served war, but World War II demanded more. German Enigma codes shifted daily, creating billions of combinations. Human minds alone could not keep pace. Enter Alan Turing and a team of cryptanalysts in Britain, joined by American efforts across the Atlantic. They designed electromechanical machines, then electronic marvels like Colossus. In the United States, ENIAC followed, a behemoth with 18,000 vacuum tubes, built not for commerce but for ballistic calculations. Computers were no longer theoretical. They had become weapons. At Bletchley Park, Colossus devoured German codes, unraveling messages in hours instead of weeks. The Allies learned where U-boats hunted, where troops massed, when attacks would strike. Convoys lived. Soldiers marched with knowledge the enemy never knew was lost. In the Pacific, ENIAC crunched artillery tables and missile trajectories with blistering speed, guiding fire with mathematical precision. The war had become too fast for paper and pencils. Only machines could keep pace. Each breakthrough in computation was invisible to the frontline soldier, but decisive to commanders shaping strategy. Secrecy cloaked these machines. Most of the world never even knew they existed until years after the war. Yet in silence, they turned the gears of victory. When peace came, computers refused to vanish. They migrated from bunkers to universities, then to businesses, then to homes. The colossal machines shrank into desktops, laptops, and phones. What was once a codebreaker became the architect of the digital age. Banking, medicine, entertainment, communication, all rewired by wartime necessity. Alan Turing's theories became the foundation of artificial intelligence. The ENIAC's monstrous circuits evolved into microchips. Today, billions of people carry descendants of Colossus in their pockets. The silent machines that once whispered secrets of war now speak every language of modern life. From secret huts to silicon chips, computers reshaped the future. In World War II, they cracked codes. Today, they run the world. But not all innovations hummed in labs. Some were born in the mud, on the battlefield itself. Number 7. Duct tape, the soldier's secret weapon. Origins, 90 words. The idea came from a factory floor, not a battlefield. In 1942, Johnson & Johnson created a waterproof, cloth-backed tape for sealing ammunition boxes. Soldiers called it duct tape because water rolled off it like a duck's back. Cheap, fast, strong, and endlessly adaptable, it spread like wildfire through supply lines. Officially, it was a sealing material. Unofficially, it became whatever soldiers needed it to be. Invention had never been simpler, or more unstoppable. Duct tape stuck to everything. Soldiers sealed boxes against rain and mud. They patched tents torn by shrapnel. They repaired jeeps in the middle of nowhere. Rifles were bound back together with strips of tape until proper repairs could be made. Even aircraft panels, battered by bullets, were patched just long enough to limp home. Medics improvised splints, holding broken bones in place with tape when wood or rope was scarce. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't headline news. But it was everywhere. In the mud of Europe, the deserts of Africa, the jungles of the Pacific, duct tape held the war together, strip by strip. Soldiers trusted it the way they trusted helmets and rifles. In war, sometimes survival depended not on the grand inventions, but on the simplest. When peace came, duct tape followed soldiers home. Builders used it. Mechanics praised it. Families kept rolls in drawers and garages. Its name shifted from duct to duct as it patched heating systems. Soon it became a cultural icon, the universal fix. From NASA missions to backyard projects, duct tape proved itself again and again. It repaired spacecraft in orbit, holding Apollo 13's crew together in their darkest hour. Today, it's a symbol of improvisation, of human stubbornness to fix what's broken. A roll born in World War II now sits in nearly every home on Earth. Duct tape taught war, and peace, that sometimes survival comes in strips. But beyond mud and tape, another invention rolled across continents, carrying soldiers, supplies, and history itself on 4 rugged wheels. The machine called the Jeep. Number 8, the Jeep, the workhorse that conquered roads. In 1940, as war loomed, the U.S. Army demanded a light, all-terrain vehicle. 4x4 drive, under 1,300 pounds, built in 49 days. Dozens of companies tried, but Willis Overland delivered. Their design was simple: flat hood, fold-down windshield, sturdy axles. Bantam and Ford contributed, but the Willis MB became the standard. It wasn't glamorous, but it was cheap, tough, and fast. Soldiers called it the Jeep, a nickname born from military slang, and it stuck. The Jeep went everywhere. Across deserts, through jungles, over mountains. It carried soldiers into combat, hauled supplies, towed artillery, ferried the wounded. It was ambulance, taxi, tractor, and scout, all in one. Dwight Eisenhower himself declared it one of the tools that won the war. In North Africa, Jeeps outran German patrols. In Italy, they climbed muddy slopes where trucks failed. In France, they rolled through liberated villages to the cheers of civilians. By war's end, over 600,000 had been built. Soldiers loved them because they never quit. With a Jeep, there was always a way forward. Its silhouette, blunt, square, unbreakable, became as iconic as any tank or plane. It wasn't built to destroy. It was built to endure. When the war ended, soldiers took the Jeep home in their hearts. Willis rebranded it for civilians, the CJ or Civilian Jeep. Farmers embraced it. Explorers pushed it into mountains and deserts. Suburbs turned it into a family car. The rugged little machine gave birth to an entire culture of off-road vehicles, SUVs, and 4x4 trucks. Today, from city streets to Himalayan trails, the Jeep's DNA lives on. What began as an army contract became a symbol of adventure, freedom, and resilience. The war gave the world many machines, but few survived peace as triumphantly as the Jeep. The Jeep conquered terrain and time, proving that mobility is power. But while wheels rolled across continents, another battlefield crisis sparked a quieter revolution. One born in chemical labs, when the world's supply of rubber collapsed overnight. Number 9, synthetic rubber and plastics, the chemistry of survival. Natural rubber came from trees in colonies, British Malaya, the Dutch East Indies. When Japan conquered them, the Allies scrambled. The U.S. launched the Rubber Emergency Program. Scientists at companies like DuPont and Goodyear experimented with petrochemicals, creating Bune-S, neoprene, and other synthetic rubbers. At the same time, plastics, once niche, were refined and mass-produced. What began as substitutes became revolutions. Chemistry, not plantations, would fuel the war. By 1944, the United States was producing nearly 1 million tons of synthetic rubber annually. Tires for Jeeps and trucks, gaskets for engines, hoses for aircraft, all flowed from chemical plants instead of jungles. Plastics followed, lightweight, durable, molded into helmets, canteens, parachutes, cockpit windows. Every battlefield carried their touch. Soldiers marched on synthetic soles. Pilots trusted plastic parts in their cockpits. Medics used plastic syringes and vials. This wasn't improvisation. It was survival engineered at industrial scale. Germany relied on synthetic rubber too, but shortages and bombings crippled its output. The Allies, with endless chemical plants, rolled forward on tires that never touched a rubber tree. When peace returned, the chemistry of survival became the chemistry of consumption. Synthetic rubber dominated car tires, shoes, sports equipment. Plastics exploded into daily life: packaging, furniture, electronics, toys. Tupperware parties became cultural icons. The disposable world, light, cheap, and everywhere, was born in the labs of World War II. From hospitals using sterile plastic tools to astronauts carrying plastic gear into space, these wartime substitutes reshaped civilization. The war's chemical revolution had unintended consequences, too: pollution, waste, and ocean choked with plastic. But there is no turning back. The legacy of scarcity became the foundation of abundance. From desperate substitutes to global staples, rubber and plastic proved that necessity breeds empires. But as factories roared, another invention screamed louder. Not in labs, but in the skies, where engines redefined speed and the future of flight. Number 10. Jet engines. Speed redefined. The idea was born years before the war. In 1930, Frank Whittle in Britain patented the first jet engine design. In Germany, Hans von Ohain pursued the same dream. Both men envisioned turbines compressing air, igniting fuel, creating thrust far beyond propellers. But war poured gasoline on invention. Nations raced to turn prototypes into weapons. By the early 1940s, Germany fielded the Me-262, while Britain tested the Gloucester Meteor. The future of flight was no longer theory. It was airborne. The Me-262 struck fear into Allied pilots. Its speed made dogfights nearly impossible. It could dive, strike bombers, and vanish before escort fighters reacted. In another world, it might have shifted the war. But delays, shortages, and Hitler's obsession with using it as a bomber crippled its potential. Britain's Gloucester Meteor saw limited action, mainly intercepting V-1 rockets. Still, the message was clear: the propeller age was dying. Every pilot who faced a jet understood the future. Behind the lines, engineers refined turbines, tested designs, and laid the groundwork for engines that would carry not only fighters, but entire nations into the skies. World War II was the birth cry of modern aviation. When peace came, the jet engine was unleashed on civilian skies. In 1952, the de Havilland Comet became the first jet airliner. Boeing and Douglas followed, ushering in the jet age. Distances shrank, continents connected. What once took weeks by ship now took hours by plane. Militaries adopted jets as standard, racing into the Cold War. From Concorde's supersonic elegance to today's passenger giants, every journey traces its lineage to wartime labs. The invention that once terrified bomber crews now carries families on vacations and business across the globe. The jet engine redefined speed, collapsing the world into hours. But while humanity soared into the skies, another weapon fell from them. A rocket of terror that would one day evolve into mankind's greatest leap beyond Earth. Number 11. Ballistic missiles, V-2 rockets, and the road to space. In the 1930s, German engineer Wernher von Braun obsessed over rocketry. Supported by the Nazi regime, he built the Aggregat series, culminating in the A-4, later known as the V-2. Fueled by liquid oxygen and alcohol, it soared 50 miles high before crashing down at supersonic speed. Unlike any bomb before, it was guided, long-range, unstoppable. It was the first ballistic missile in history. Born of science, twisted into terror. From 1944, thousands of V-2s rained on London, Antwerp, and Paris. Civilians had no defense. By the time they heard the blast, it was already too late. Thousands were killed, thousands more wounded. But the weapon came at a terrible cost. Vast resources, slave labor from concentration camps, and little strategic impact. The V-2 could terrorize, but it could not win the war. Still, its design was revolutionary. Gyroscopic guidance, liquid-fueled engines, high-altitude trajectories. Every rocket after would trace its DNA back to von Braun's creation. As Germany collapsed, the Allies scrambled to seize the technology and the scientists. In secret operations, Americans captured von Braun and his team, while the Soviets secured factories. The war for Earth was ending. The race for space was beginning. After 1945, the V-2 became the foundation of the space age. In America, von Braun built rockets for NASA, culminating in the Saturn V that carried men to the moon. In the Soviet Union, Sergei Korolev used captured technology to launch Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin into orbit. The Cold War became a rocket war. Missiles aimed at cities, rockets aimed at the heavens. Satellites, intercontinental ballistic missiles, lunar landings, space stations. All were born from a Nazi terror weapon. The legacy of the V-2 was paradoxical. An engine of destruction transformed into a ladder to the stars. The V-2 showed mankind that the sky was no limit. Forged in war, perfected in peace, it became both the shadow of annihilation and the dream of exploration. From ashes of cities, humanity found a path to the cosmos. The legacy of fire. The guns fell silent in 1945. The smoke cleared. Cities lay in ruins. Graves stretched to the horizon. World War II was over. But its story did not end. Because even as nations buried their dead, the war's inventions lived on. They seeped into homes, hospitals, skies, and streets. The war had ended with silence, yet its echoes thunder still, every day in the lives of billions. Wars are judged by battles won and borders drawn. But history holds another scale, the legacy left behind. In World War II, victory was forged not just in blood, but in invention. Radar's pulses became weather forecasts. Penicillin's vials became hospitals' lifelines. Plasma's bottles became ambulances' salvation. Duct tape patched not only gear, but the culture of repair. The Jeep became freedom on wheels. Plastics filled kitchens and oceans alike. Jet engines shrank the globe. Computers rewrote civilization. Nuclear fire lit cities, and shadows of fear. Rockets, once vengeance, became vehicles to the moon. Every innovation was a spark torn from the storm. Sparks that lit the modern world. But this legacy was not born clean. It was bought with terror, with blood, with desperation. Synthetic rubber was molded in plants because jungles were stolen by war. The V-2 rockets were assembled by slave labor in camps of death. Nuclear power was proven in mushroom clouds over cities. Even penicillin and plasma, miracles of life, were perfected because so many lay dying. World War II accelerated science by decades, but at a price humanity can never repay. Progress was forged in fire, and the scars remain etched into history. Look around today. In the kitchen, microwave hums. On the road, a Jeep rolls by. A plane streaks overhead, its jet engine screaming across the sky. A hospital administers plasma, antibiotics, treatments born of war. A satellite arcs above, tracing the path of rockets once called vengeance. Nuclear power glows in city grids. Computers whisper everywhere. The world we know is the shadow of 1945. World War II was not only the war that ended empires. It was the war that invented the modern age. The war ended, but its innovations never did. Forged in fire, born of desperation, they still live with us. The true legacy of World War II is today.